Welcome to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host. Here's our format. A bunch of guys sitting around a bar. There's no bar. Having drinks. There's no drinks either. But we're talking business, and you, the audience, are listening in. The Best of Investing is actually a radio show that has been around since August 2010, and it airs every Saturday on Fox News Radio, 9:10 a.m. at 1 p.m. Now, we're not a political show. We're strictly business, so everyone will be happy with that. We'll have various speakers, guest speakers, attorneys, accountants, economic advisors. But the cool thing about this is that you're actually getting to see scenes behind the scenes. So we all have headphones on because we're recording a radio show that is going to be airing on the air on radio. But in addition, you get to see what happens during the commercial breaks, how we prepare for the next segment. So it's a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of levity because I like to try to throw a little bit of humor in there because, just business by itself sometimes gets a little boring. So you got to always kind of break things. Remember, I'm Edward Brown, wishing you the best of investing. Are you ready? Let's go. Cool. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Mr. Crema. Okay. And away we go. Welcome. You're listening to the Best of Investing on News Talk 910. This is the show where we present valuable information about real estate, the financial markets, and other economic business of the day. And for those of you listening for the first time, here's our format. A few guys sitting around a bar having drinks without the drinks, talking business with you, the audience, listening in. I'm your host, Edward Brown, and I'm pleased to have as my co-host Mark Hanf of Pacific Private Money and Lou Botmal of LPL Financial. And today's trivia theme is operettas, or should I say, are operettas. We got to teach some class here on the Best of Investing and a little grammar too. Okay, our website is bestofinvesting.com. Check us out on Facebook and YouTube by typing Best of Investing Radio Show. And we're also on television, Comcast Channel 26 on Saturdays at noon. Now, today's special guest is Mike Dawson, who is a portfolio manager from MFS Mutual Funds, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the oldest mutual fund family in the U.S. Mike, welcome to the Best of Investing.
Oh, Edward, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Good. And Lou, why don't you just go right in, because what portfolio does he manage?
Well, I know Mike for managing municipal bonds in the state of California, although I think he controls bonds in several states for MFS. I think most investors know that if you own a state-specific municipal bond, it is tax-free both federally and on the state level. But I'm going to turn it over to Mike because Mike's the expert in this arena, and we're not. And Mike, maybe you can talk to our listeners real quick about why municipal bonds are a good investment.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's no secret that there's been, a ton of volatility in the markets overall in the last few years. And if investors are thinking about an asset class that can deliver real stable income, obviously on a tax-free basis with all of the talk and headline news about changes in the tax codes, and then certainly a way to be as immunized from all of the volatility occurring, whether it's in Europe or in Asia, you find the municipal bond market is probably one of the most plain vanilla safe havens in spite of some of the headline news that's hit our market recently in the last few years about budget deficits and so forth. When you start looking at real risk and loss of principal and volatility in the changes in value, it is so small compared to these other markets that I think some of that headline news gets overblown. And this market really is a place for investors where they can buy and hold and have a certain amount of needs met for their income, or investing in plain vanilla, and protection from the massive amount of volatility that's been taking place in the market.
Okay. Hey, Mike, with interest rates low now but potentially creeping up, would you favor short-term munis right now, or are you still looking for long-term?
Yeah, so our outlook is that rates eventually are going to go up, but for the next couple of years at least, we are going to be in a relatively low interest rate environment. And a lot of that has to do with and being driven by what's happening with monetary policy, not just in the U.S. but abroad, and keeping short rates extremely low. Our feeling is that for some investors that are concerned about potential changes in interest rates, that rates may start to creep up sooner rather than later, then absolutely shorter maturity bonds can can definitely mitigate some of that interest rate risk when rates do go up. However, we do feel like that point and period is a little bit further out in the next couple of years, and that you're still safer investing in bonds, even out to 10 to 15-year maturities. That's the area that we found to be the sweet spot in the yield curve as of late. We're finding we're getting the most amount of income for a given amount of interest rate risk.
And do you guys only buy AAA bonds, or how low quality do you guys buy?
Yeah, we still favor the investment grade market. The economy is in a muddle along scenario, and from our opinion, so it's going to be positive but low through the elections into next year. With all that kind of uncertainty, we definitely feel like the mid to and low investment grade categories, a single A, even triple B, you are getting paid for some extra credit risk in the muni market.
Yeah, I was told years ago that 95% of all munis that had ever defaulted were actually AAA. So I don't think having triple B bonds is a bad thing.
No, in fact, a lot of investors don't understand how safe even triple B rated, the lowest investment grade rated municipal bonds can be. There are studies that you can find that are out there. Some of them done by the rating agencies, others over long periods of time, 20, 25 years plus, when they compared the default rates on municipal bonds and related that to corporate bonds. They found that triple B rated municipal bonds defaulted less historically than AAA rated corporate bonds. And that was just an amazing statistic that we've seen in the past that most average investors don't understand how safe munis are.
And I'm sorry for going on like this because I have all these little questions here. Would that have included both general obligation and revenue bonds, like the whole gambit?
It would absolutely include the whole gamut.
Wow.
Generally speaking, the revenue bond sector is about twice as large as the general obligation sector in the overall municipal bond market, whether it's California or nationally, whatever you're looking at. So we know that about a third of the bonds in the muni market overall are issued by state and local municipalities, those as plain vanilla general obligation bonds.
It's funny.
About 2/3 are revenue-backed bonds.
It's funny. Even though interest rates are fairly low and the rate of return on munis is not fantastic on a current rate, I know many people hate paying taxes so much that they would rather have a super low return if it's tax free. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, Mike, that's a good question. Taylor, into this thing. Everyone's kind of nervous about the election and tax policy moving forward. We have a lot of debt to pay off as a government, and people feel tax rates are going up, and we've seen the asset class of munis rise in value over the last, I'd say, 6 or 9 months. Is that accurate, or and if so, where's it headed?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely accurate. In fact, there's been a great run in the muni market. If you go back even further, pretty much at least until from last spring, a year ago spring, I should say, there's been an incredible run in the muni market. I think really what happened was we went through a period where we were getting awful headline news. And after, I think, the dust settled and people realized that widespread defaults were not occurring, that it was safe to dip their toes back into the muni market. There was tremendous value there. And the total returns on some of these bonds and the price appreciation on many of these bonds has been easily in the double digits. Equity-like returns for a pretty safe investment. Wow. So where we stand from here, we think that going forward, you're much more likely to get a return that resembles more of the coupon in terms of what you get in terms of interest paid, and you might still get a little bit of capital appreciation from bonds, maybe in that mid to low investment grade, that will have some spread tightening relative to the highest grade bonds, and that will allow for a little bit, maybe 1 or 2% of capital appreciation. So,
okay, hey,
future returns shouldn't be anything like what we've seen over the last year or so.
Okay, we're in the studio with Mike Dawson, who is a portfolio manager for MFS Mutual Fund, specifically in the muni market. When we're going to cut to a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to ask Mike what bonds he favors. So, audience, make sure you stay tuned with us. Quick little announcement here. Last week we had a special trivia question. Here was the question: almost half of women don't want their mothers to see what? And the answer was inside their refrigerators. Okay, here is our first commercial break, and here's our first trivia question. And again, the theme is operettas. Mark's favorite theme. The songs "Music of the Night" and And all I ask of you. I'm sorry. Okay. From
Really?
Andrew Lloyd Webber's operetta.
Just
Which
stop,
one?
please.
It's Just Stop. Yeah. Hey, not only do I have a face for radio, I have a voice for. No, I don't. Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll be right back. Excellent.
So, Mike, we're going to come right back to you in about a minute or 2 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just a few minutes.
You okay, Mike?
Is you still there?
No problem.
All right,
Okay.
Very good.
Sorry for taking up all your
Who
time.
knows the answer to the question?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. You must have been on
Oh,
a
come on.
date.
Seriously? You guys don't know?
No, Phantom of the Opera?
Yes, of
Family
course.
That's the only one I know.
It's not really an opera, is it?
Phantom of
Actually,
the
that's
Best
the
of
only
Investing.
one I've ever seen, too. That's how
It's
pathetic
not
I
an
am.
opera.
Really?
Phantom of the Opera's not an opera.
It's operetta.
It's
Operetta.
operetta, yes.
That's why I said that today's.
That's the only operetta I've ever
Otherwise,
seen,
it's
is Phantom of the
it's
Operetta.
Brunhilde. You know, dun, 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 dun,
Now
dun.
we're talking about turn.
I can't do operas.
When they have Family Guy the musical, then I'll go see it.
So, this place is so classy.
Or, Homer
Don't put that on TV.
It goes,
Don't put that on TV. I have a tie on, for gosh sake. You know.
I got shorts on.
All right, yep.
Yep.
I got a question.
Yes.
Is there any chance you can bring up his volume so I can pick it up and turn down there if you have to?
Yeah.
Would that work for you?
Yeah, I thought he was pretty loud. Oh, he's not. He's
Yeah,
not there.
thank you.
Okay.
That works? Good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, we're gonna let Mark answer this question.
What?
He's gonna answer the operetta question. Ready? There you go. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mark Hahn of Pacific Private Money and Lou Botmal of LPL Financial. And when we get to the first commercial break, we asked this trivia question. Again, the theme is operettas. The songs Music of the Night and All I Ask of You are from what Andrew Lloyd Webber operetta? Mark.
Oh, gosh, I don't know. Family Guy the musical?
Family Guy the Musical. That is incorrect. What's the only other one you
Phantom
know?
of the Opera.
Phantom of the Opera.
That's the only one I've ever
That one is
seen.
correct. Okay, very good. And we're also
Oh
in
my
the
God.
studio here with Mike Dawson from MFS Mutual Funds. And when we just before we cut to the break, I told the listeners I was going to ask you this question. What municipal bonds do you favor nowadays, Mike?
Yeah, there are a couple of sectors that we've been really excited about. I mean, with a lot of the headline news about new federal healthcare regulations, the tax-exempt healthcare market has seen a lot of opportunities in bonds that had been beaten down, particularly where there were some bonds that had some greater share of Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement. We also have seen some bonds for the higher ed sector, so whether it's private universities that might have, huge endowments. Certainly they've had, a lot of plant and equipment and rising tuitions that they've had to deal with. But for the most part, a lot of these bonds, they're going to be around forever. They have great security, and some of those yields had spread out wider to some of the highest quality bonds in the recent past. So healthcare, higher ed, and then we even like some of the California school district bonds. Believe it or not, some of these areas where they get most of their revenue from property tax revenues, they have huge assessed valuation, multi-billion-dollar assessed valuations in their cities and towns. And in those particular cases, they also are part of the TEETR program in California, which, if they ever did run into a problem, the county that the city is located in can offer some financial help when those assessed valuations drop. So there's a lot of protection for bondholders in there, in spite of what happens, with the headline news about local school districts.
Well, it's funny you bring up headlines, Mike, because if you can comment quickly, in the paper, I read the Journal and those other things which are highlighting this all the time, but clients get snippets of municipal investment news every once in a while, and 90% of the time it's negative. Locally here in the Bay Area, we are conflicted with Vallejo and Stockton, which has been the headlines about bankruptcy, and then San Bernardino, I guess, has some issues as well. Can you comment about those at all, or let us know a little bit more?
I mean, sure. I mean, again, this is all from a bondholder's perspective, my perspective, and not necessarily if I were, a citizen of any one of these towns. We look at it as some of the issues that had driven, in the case of Vallejo, some of these issues were prior to the recession, where you had a great run-up in property tax revenues. And all the while, you also have a period of giving out some relatively larger contracts for municipal employee unions whether it's for fire or for police or even just for the municipal employees themselves, that some of those contracts, when looked out over the next 5-10 years when they entered into them, might have looked fine with the huge run-up in real estate that they had, but they were wholly unprepared for the drop in property tax revenues after the recession occurred. And so what ended up happening, and it was not unique to just those towns, there's 10s, 20, 30 different towns that you have in the state itself, a lot in Central California and Inland Empire, where they saw some of the most severe drops in real estate affected in a really short period of time their property tax revenues. So they ran into trouble with the greatest proportion of their local revenue base, and they weren't able to cut expenses fast enough. And that's what really caused a lot of these areas to have some severe stress. I can speak a little bit to the fact that, Stockton and to some degree San Bernardino are also trying to find ways of using Chapter 9 bankruptcy in order to potentially renegotiate some of those pension employee contracts that they have for health care and for retirement.
Right.
That, as far as the budget is concerned, might be a little bit onerous, and they want to find ways of saving some money because they've already made great strides in cutting and reducing some of their budget deficits.
How successful is that?
Running low. What's that?
How successful has that been?
Well, in the case of Vallejo, they actually went through the entire bankruptcy process and actually have already emerged from bankruptcy, and they left all of the pension contracts alone. They actually didn't touch any of them. They just got through reorganizing so they can get back to providing services and so forth. Stockton is still under review. They're in the midst of the bankruptcy process, so it's a wait and see how it's going to end up. I believe it's going to be in the hands of some Superior Court judge in San Francisco that'll eventually decide.
So
and San Bernardino is very recent as well. So,
Wait, Mike, with Vallejo then, if they left all the contracts in place, where did they save money?
well, they had come to agreement in order to, with not just the town, the city itself, in terms of where they could reduce expenses, reduce the number of employees that they would have working there, but also they had to negotiate with the municipal bond insurance companies that were getting paid, for the most part, 100 cents on the dollar, and they found, for the ones that were not insured, they found some of those constituents that